My name is Nate with Common Sense Gaming, and I want to tell you about why I refunded Cyberpunk 2077. Let's start with about a year ago. I made a video on this channel talking about how you should be cautious as a consumer when getting into Cyberpunk because it was looking like we were starting to blow this game out of proportion, and there was no way our expectations would ever be met. As cool as the trailers looked and this world, and we had famous actor Keanu Reeves, the car, like there's that really cool slick like street car that is really awesome, and there's all these cool elements to the game, but I could see that the gameplay was gonna perhaps fall short. And CD Projekt Red had a great track record, so we had really no room to believe that they were gonna mess this up. And that's where I want to get into. This game is not a bad game. I played just under 2 hours, and then I refunded it on Steam. Now I want to talk about specifically why. When I purchased Cyberpunk, I was spending $60 for what was pretty much a cultural phenomenon in the gaming industry. This is something everyone was playing. This is something that everybody, even people who don't play video games, were getting excited about. So these are people that play very casually. They play on consoles. They were excited about Cyberpunk. So I wanted to have a piece of that experience. Knowing full well what I was probably going to be expecting, I paid the $60, hoping that this would be a great experience. This is going to be an amazing RPG game, or whatever you want to call it. I play a whole bunch of different types of games. You're watching Dark Souls 2, by the way. I don't play just, competitive FPS shooters. If you know me from my other channel, Nateson. I got, like I said, a little under 2 hours into the game, and I was not blown away at all. Actually, I was a little frustrated. And I want to talk about how this is not because of the bugs. Yes, obviously there are a ton of bugs in this game. I frankly was not dealing with that in my first 2 hours, and I'm going to assume that that may have something to do with maybe the polish of the first chunk of the game is a little bit better than the rest, which would make sense. And I want to get specifically into the gameplay of it and the story of it and kind of just the writing perspective from what I had seen. So let's start with the gameplay. I think it is incredibly disappointing when you have like the cool hack feature. You have any of this like highly advanced technological gameplay mechanic involved with your character. I think it's cool. This is something we kind of see in Watch Dogs and something we see in like almost like Deus Ex type of. Watch Dogs is the best example. We're hacking basically. Now Cyberpunk, when you start out in this, you go through that tutorial area after a while. After probably like 30 minutes you're in the tutorial area, and it walks you through how to shoot, how to do all the hacks. I could not believe how shoehorned in the hacking side of the game was. The cyber part of Cyberpunk. It was very janky. The button layout was awful, and it was not a matter of, I need to just remap my keybinds. It's just something that you don't really need to use in game. And when I'm watching gameplay from streamers who are further into the game, I don't really see them using these hack abilities. I see them mostly just shooting their weapons. And that's how I would probably play regardless, but I was really hoping that it would be a little bit more intuitive on that front. So I was already a little disappointed to see that the gameplay mechanic of hacking and that more cyber technology side was kind of a gimmick. I think gimmick is the best word for this. Now the second part is overall the writing. I think going into this, obviously when I'm 2 hours in, I have not experienced the entire game, so maybe, depending on the person, it's very subjective who you talk to. Maybe like 15 more hours in, you would rate this like a very well-written game. That may be very true, but I think my first 2 hours, I was disappointed in it plays a movie that is a really quick, it shows a lot of events in a montage of you going through your life, and you can tell that this, video edit thing was cut in, not long before its release. I was shocked at how disoriented I was. Kind of like I'm an audience essentially. I'm no longer the player. I'm just a viewer at that point, like I'm watching a movie. I was very disoriented. I wasn't quite sure what was being shown to me. And this is, our cue at the very end. It says, a year later or whatever. Like, oh, okay, so this is a year has passed. I assume this is what was happening. Time was passing. I picked the street route, and spoiler alert, first, hour in, I think is when this part plays, and it just shows us playing with that ripped guy who were with that we were jumping the car, and were doing stuff together. We basically built a life of friendship in about a year. And it was, I'm gonna use the word shoehorned in again. It felt very forced, last second. I really was not a fan of the editing style of it. And that's where I'm gonna stop with that side. It was disappointing. I was not pulled into this at all. And this also goes to going to that mission. I remember I had to jump over, like your character running to the car in the parking lot. You had to jump over a wall. And when my character landed, it was the most, like, I remember playing games on my Xbox 360 back in like 2010 where it felt like the same animation. My character hits the ground because it's like a 6-foot fall or something. He hits the ground in such a dramatic way. And I thought it was like such a waste of my time as a player because I hate extra animations added in these games. I think gameplay is more important than the animation polish. I think anyone who disagrees with me is, well, anyways, I remember my character hit the ground. It says like, oh, F, and then stood back up. And I'm sitting there. I'm 23 years old. I like to think I'm somewhat mature. And I see that and I'm like, okay, I see this game is probably made more for 14-year-olds, 14, 15, 13. Of course, later we see there's quite a bit of nudity in the game. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this is definitely the type of game, in my opinion, where they make these things for like 13 to 15-year-olds, like 12 to 15-year-olds that like feel really cool that this is a very adult experience. And that's why we have curse words thrown in at the most unrealistic times, constantly saying them. And I'm always very disappointed in game. I mean, think of Call of Duty campaign. That's the comparison I draw often to this style of dialogue. And I will say I have nothing against curse words. I think it's just like the way we use it in storytelling can often be disappointing, especially in gaming. I think gaming really stands on this hill of having no idea how to write curse words or expletives into a game. I think we can use them way smarter and we can have them be effective and meaningful. But instead we have our characters saying them at the strangest times. I know this is such a strange moment for me to pick out, but it's specifically my character hitting the ground, dramatic animation, and he's like, F. It was something like how I just said it. And I felt like I had outgrown the game. And going in, we're seeing all these random things. You pick up this some sort of robot girl out of a like cryo bathtub or something, and she's like hooked up to some machine. A whole bunch of weird stuff going on. It's like you're trying to rescue her, and then an evac comes of some sorts. And I'm seeing at all this. We're being hit with so much information at once. It's pretty overwhelming, and I assume that's what it's like, especially for a younger gamer that's playing through the game. And I remember just at that moment, I'm thinking, this is probably going to get refunded. That I have not been impressed by a single moment of this gameplay. The graphics, they look fine. I mean, they look great. It's a really good looking game. It will bring a system down to its knees, especially if your system is a console from 2016 or whenever the Xbox Series or whenever the Xbox One and the PS4 came out. If you guys have seen that generation of consoles, now considered the last generation of consoles, we're running the games at a low resolution, an awful frame rate, and constant texture issues. The way they have coded the game to load assets and textures like based on view distance and how close you are to the actual object itself. It was very, very slow, and that has to do with a lot of things, like playing on a hard drive, which those consoles are, playing on very, very old CPU and very old GPUs. This is going to happen. So I understood that was going to happen. I think the PC port was fine on my 2080 Ti. I know there are bugs in the game. I did not encounter a ton, or at least didn't see it when it was on my screen. This is, again, strictly, I refunded the game because I thought it was a decent game. It was decent at best. And I think a lot of people are going to go through and they're going to say, yeah, you know what, that was a good game. But I've already seen people who talk about, I believe it was a YouTuber who talked about his top 10 games of like 2020, and he did not put Cyberpunk on. And I've seen videos where there are community games or like community driven polls, and this was right when Cyberpunk came out. People were voting Cyberpunk like the best open world RPG, whatever the label of it is. And the YouTuber, he said You know what, guys, I really don't agree with this one, but you guys did vote Cyberpunk. And I think a lot of the votes were from that initial excitement of Cyberpunk coming out, playing through, like, oh yeah, it's so good. But you get someone with a ton of gameplay experience, time, more critical eye. I think you probably look at Cyberpunk and you're like, this is just a decent game. And I think people who have played a lot of games across a lot of different genres are going to feel that Cyberpunk is a decent game. It's a decent game. It is not bad at all. But I'm refunding Cyberpunk because I did not pay $60 for a decent game. I paid $60 because I wanted a great cutting edge gameplay experience. And that's what Cyberpunk kind of marketed itself out to be. And some of that marketing was probably done because the audience expectation was going through the roof, so they kind of ran with it. And I think when we saw the release date for the game to ship being pushed back more and more, up until when we were like 3 weeks away from the game, and they pushed it back again. I think we kind of knew what was going on behind the scenes. We knew that the game was not ready, and so going in, most of us were understanding that this was not going to be a smooth, perfect game with no bugs. I had some friends with way more bugs. My friend McQuax sent me a picture, I remember, of some really messed up visuals. Completely takes you out of the immersion of the game, and there are a ton of experiences like that. You even see like Linus Tech Tips in his review, where I'm sure they like hardly played the game at all. Linus will sit down and play for just however long the shoot is, like whether they're shooting the video for 30 minutes. They have people that play the game behind the scenes to catch them up to whatever area, so Linus can come in on set and do the video part. They had a bug like on screen, or like I think multiple. And I just want to really hit home at the point that I did not refund the game because of the bugs. I very much knew that was going to be in there. This is from the gameplay experience and this being a decent game. So please take that from this video. If anything, I refunded Cyberpunk because it was just a decent game. I did not pay $60 for a decent game. I was hoping for a great gameplay experience. And I think this is a great segue into kind of audience expectations for AAA games going forward. I don't even know if we can consider this a AAA game. This is like a quadruple A game. Like, this is 10 years in development, however many years. I know it's a really, really, really long time. This is a long time development project by a big company that was known for AAA titles, The Witcher 3 being, I would say, their biggest. And I think it means that nobody is safe. There's not one company that you can expect a AAA game to be perfect from. As much as, in my heart and soul, I just want to say Blizzard, because Blizzard would never release a game because they have a track record of releasing games that are polished. And I think Blizzard is one of the better companies out there, but Activision Blizzard technically is the one that released Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Call of Duty Cold War. So those are two games that immediately kind of jab into the reputation. And because those were not complete games on launch, especially Cold War. Cold War is very disappointing. So I want us to set this expectation that when we're talking about games and future games that are to be revealed, AAA titles, we should not have an expectation to pre-order. We should not have an expectation that they are going to be working on launch. We should have no expectation or high hopes of them to be a great gameplay experience, because I think these companies are more out to deliver less lately, and it's something that you see really in the mainstream game franchise, in the mainstream gaming scene, where with $60 and now $70 games on the next generation consoles, we're seeing very disappointing numbers. When I talk about the price, very disappointing prices being compared to a game that has a suboptimal experience. And that's why I think $70 for the next generation of games is really disappointing. Because you can't tell me I'm going to pay $70 for Madden. I mean, that's a slap in the face. Picking on sports games is always going to work, so I should be more fair when I say, more titles than just that. But imagine paying $70 for Cyberpunk. That's not really a $70 game. In my opinion, it's not really a $60 game. That's something like, okay, $29.99, that'd be okay. It's just a decent game. This video's kind of all over the place. Thank you for having me back, though. We'll have some more concise type of videos this week. And yeah, those were my thoughts on Cyberpunk after 2 hours. And I guess I have to say I was right about the game turning out the way it did. The reviews on Steam are mostly positive. I think even the studio would agree. They wish the reviews were a little bit better and that they didn't get as much heat when the launch came because of all the trending bugs on Twitter and whatnot. That was really fun to see. Yeah, it just goes to show. There's the famous saying, a rushed game is, you know the saying, you see it posted everywhere. A delayed game is eventually a good game. There we go. All right, guys. Thanks for having me. See ya.